The first sensation many Americans describe upon arriving in Australia is not culture shock in the dramatic sense, but something subtler, almost atmospheric. The light feels sharper, the sky wider, the air less hurried. In cities like Sydney or Brisbane, the ocean is never conceptually far away. Even in business districts, there is an undercurrent of leisure woven into the day. For Americans accustomed to vertical skylines and compressed schedules, Australia often feels horizontally expansive, both physically and psychologically. At first glance, the similarities appear reassuring. The language is shared, the storefronts familiar, the coffee culture sophisticated. Yet beneath that surface lies a tempo that unsettles expectations. Americans tend to notice how rarely conversations begin with professional identity. In the United States, introductions often orbit around occupation, ambition, or future plans. In Australia, discussions drift toward weekend rituals, coastal weather, or shared experiences rather than upward mobility. This difference quietly reshapes perception. Many Americans arrive prepared for an echo of home, only to encounter a society that values ease over urgency. The workday may be productive, yet it rarely dominates personal identity. Offices empty with a sense of collective permission. Even in competitive industries, achievement is worn lightly, almost discreetly. There is ambition, certainly, but it coexists with an unwritten rule: life must not be consumed by striving. Social interactions reveal another layer. Americans are often struck by the directness wrapped in casual tone. Australians may tease as a sign of inclusion, flatten hierarchies with humor, and resist overt displays of status. Titles carry less ceremonial weight. Authority is acknowledged, yet seldom glorified. In group settings, overt self-promotion can create distance rather than admiration. Pace becomes the most persistent contrast. In many American cities, time feels segmented, optimized, monetized. Productivity is a moral measure. In Australia, time appears elastic. Lunch can stretch. Conversations are rarely rushed to conclusion. Even urban professionals often organize life around outdoor rituals, morning swims, evening walks, weekend barbecues. The climate itself seems to insist on participation in the natural world. For Americans shaped by a culture of acceleration, this recalibration can feel disorienting. Efficiency is not abandoned, but it is not worshipped. The absence of visible hustle may initially register as complacency. Yet over time, the pattern suggests intention rather than indifference. Australians tend to guard personal equilibrium as a collective value. Subtle signals reinforce this ethos. Dress codes lean relaxed, even in corporate corridors. Luxury exists, yet understatement prevails. Displays of wealth are muted, almost private. Public space belongs to everyone: beaches, parks, coastal paths. The landscape does not merely decorate life, it structures it. As days accumulate, many Americans begin to sense that the difference is not rooted in policy or economics alone, but in emotional climate. Australia often feels less performative. There is less pressure to narrate success, less urgency to signal constant progress. The silence between ambitions grows wider, and within that space, a different rhythm begins to emerge. As familiarity deepens, Americans often begin to observe how this rhythm influences behavior in subtle, pervasive ways. In the United States, social energy frequently orbits around aspiration. Conversations lean toward what is being built, launched, expanded, optimized. In Australia, the social current moves differently. Achievement exists, yet it is rarely announced with ceremony. Success tends to be absorbed into ordinary life rather than elevated above it. In professional settings, Americans may notice an unexpected flattening of hierarchy. Managers are addressed by first names. Meetings carry a tone that blends competence with informality. Debate can be direct, even blunt, but rarely theatrical. The absence of overt competition can feel disarming. Where Americans might anticipate visible ambition, Australians often project steadiness. Progress is valued, yet the performance of progress is restrained. This cultural restraint extends into lifestyle choices. Many Americans are accustomed to dense schedules that signal purpose. Calendars fill quickly, evenings structured around productivity or networking. In Australia, open space in the schedule is not automatically interpreted as laziness. It is often seen as balance. Afternoons can remain unclaimed. Weekends are defended with quiet resolve. The beach, the backyard, the long outdoor meal, these are not luxuries postponed for retirement but regular fixtures of life. The relationship with nature reinforces this orientation. Coastal cities blur the boundary between urban and elemental. Office towers stand within reach of surf. Parks are not ornamental, they are inhabited. Americans frequently remark on how colleagues discuss tides, weather shifts, or weekend hikes with the same seriousness reserved for quarterly results back home. The natural environment is not an escape from life, it is part of its architecture. Communication styles deepen the contrast. Americans often employ encouragement and enthusiasm as social glue. Compliments are frequent, positivity amplified. Australians, by comparison, may express approval through understatement. Praise is economical. Irony softens intensity. To an American ear, this can initially sound detached. Over time, however, it reveals a preference for authenticity over amplification. Emotional displays are present, but rarely inflated. Even consumption patterns reflect the broader ethos. Brands carry influence, yet overt luxury signaling is muted. Casual attire dominates public spaces. Restaurants emphasize atmosphere over spectacle. Americans accustomed to visible markers of success may sense a recalibration of status. Social credibility emerges less from accumulation and more from relatability. Gradually, prolonged exposure reshapes internal measures. Many Americans begin to notice a softening of urgency within themselves. The reflex to optimize every hour loosens. Conversations linger. Even ambition recalibrates, shifting from relentless expansion toward sustainable contentment. The transformation is rarely dramatic. It unfolds quietly, through repetition of small cultural cues that suggest life need not always accelerate to prove its worth. Over time, the contrast ceases to feel like novelty and begins to operate as quiet influence. Americans who remain in Australia long enough often experience an internal negotiation between two inherited scripts. One script insists on measurable advancement, on visible milestones and constant motion. The other, encountered daily in Australian life, proposes steadiness as a virtue and moderation as a form of intelligence. This negotiation appears in small decisions. The impulse to accept every professional opportunity begins to slow. Invitations are weighed not only against career gain but against personal equilibrium. The question subtly shifts from, will this advance status, to, will this disturb balance? Australians tend to treat equilibrium as a collective norm rather than an individual luxury. That shared expectation gently redirects behavior. Social belonging reinforces the shift. In many American contexts, admiration gravitates toward scale, larger homes, faster growth, louder visibility. In Australia, social approval often centers on approachability. Excessive self-importance meets quiet resistance. Humor functions as a leveling tool, dissolving pretension before it hardens. Americans immersed in this environment frequently adjust tone, softening self-description, allowing achievements to remain implied rather than declared. Emotional climate deepens the transformation. The American cultural atmosphere often rewards intensity, strong opinions, passionate declarations, decisive momentum. Australian settings tend to diffuse intensity. Disagreement is expressed, yet dramatic escalation is rare. Public discourse may be firm, but it seldom seeks spectacle. This steadiness can initially feel subdued to Americans accustomed to heightened expression. With time, it can also feel stabilizing. Even the perception of success evolves. Instead of defining fulfillment through accumulation or rapid ascent, many Americans begin to observe satisfaction in continuity. Long coastal walks, regular gatherings, consistent routines acquire symbolic weight. The repetition of simple pleasures becomes meaningful rather than mundane. The surrounding culture affirms that depth may matter more than velocity. None of this suggests absence of ambition. Australia cultivates innovation, expertise, and global engagement. Yet these pursuits are framed within a broader understanding that life extends beyond professional identity. Americans who internalize this framing often describe a recalibrated sense of self, less compressed, less performative, less tethered to constant comparison. In the end, the difference is not dramatic but atmospheric. Australia feels different because it distributes value differently. It grants leisure moral legitimacy. It tempers aspiration with irony. It treats nature not as backdrop but as participant. For Americans shaped by acceleration, this environment can gradually rewrite emotional reflexes. The measure of a day becomes less about how much was conquered and more about how evenly it unfolded. Within that gentler cadence, life acquires a distinct texture, one that lingers quietly, even when horizons shift again.